Okay, what looks like we're going live now.
There you go.
There we are. You got her.
We are, it looks like we are live on
Okay, what looks like we're going.
Looks
Okay.
awesome.
You got her.
Perfect. Well, welcome to.
Looks like we are live on.
Okay, what looks like we're going.
Looks
Okay.
awesome.
Okay. I'm gonna mute that there. All right. Welcome to St. Andrews. This is the third in our series of conversations around the subjects of mental health. It's been something we've been talking about here for a while at St. Andrews, and then especially as COVID has settled into not just being a fad or a phase that we seem to be going through, but is quickly becoming the normal that we remember. We find ourselves again talking about how mental health has been impacted, affected, and changed in this weird season that we all find ourselves sharing in. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on YouTube. We missed being able to do these events in person, but it is what it is. Tonight is styled a little bit differently than it is because of the translation through technology. And so there are options tonight for interaction and engagement spread throughout. If you have questions for any of our panelists here tonight, feel free to put those in the comments, or if you would prefer a greater sense of anonymity, there is a text line that's opened up. The phone number, the number for that is 403-668-0396. You can text your questions in there and we'll make sure that they get answered by the panelists when and as they come in. I will make sure that is available that number is available in the chat as well. My name is Jared Miller. I'm the Minister for Mission here at St. Andrews, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and friend in ministry, Jeffrey Simmons, who is our Pastoral Care Minister here. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your leadership tonight, and I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thanks, Jared. Hi, everybody, and I also extend my welcome. I'm your host for this event, and I'm serving as the Interim Pastoral Care Minister at St. Andrews here in Calgary. And from wherever you happen to be tuning in and whatever time you happen to be tuning in, we are glad that you're here. And we hope that this event will give you some new perspectives on a new hope as we all grapple with mental health challenges during the pandemic. Now, if you are experiencing challenge with mental health these days, you're not alone. And today's session is not intended to replace professional counseling. If you happen to feel that hope is far away, or if you just need someone to talk to, please call the Distress Center's 24-hour crisis line, and they can be reached at 403-266-4357. We'll put that in the chat as well. And we're going to put 3 links into the chat about resources from our community that address mental health issues. And please reach out when you need help. Well, of course, we're going to hear about other resources and other perspectives from our speakers today. And each of our speakers has been asked to share something about their recent experience of mental health challenges, particularly those that have become more evident or made worse as a result of the pandemic. And some thank yous and an introduction to our speakers. Well, thanks to Reverend Jared, and he's our Minister of Mission, and that means being where we're needed. And I think he's needed all over the place, and reminds me of that old blues song. He's needed by the men, by the women, by the boys and the girls, all over the place. And so we thank you, Jared, for providing technical help and also support to the mission team. And we want to recognize Brian Hocko, Brent Harding, Bill Judd, Jamie Hodge, and others on that mission team. And they've assembled this diverse panel that is sitting here in front of you waiting to share their knowledge. And they work with people out in our communities, real people who are negotiating difficult terrain as they try to keep their physical, mental, and spiritual health together. And our 4 speakers are, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order, is Adam Hall. And Adam, if you wouldn't mind waving, there we go. Our former youth director at St. Andrews and is currently a psychologist with the Calgary Area School Board. He chaired last year's meeting. And so welcome back. We're so glad to see you. Ernest Poundmaker. Ernie is an elder and counselor with the Aboriginal Friendship Center of Calgary, and he'll be speaking to mental health in the Indigenous communities. Welcome, Ernie. We're so glad that you're here this evening.
Thank you.
Joelle Richardson. Joelle is, it's not too hard to figure out who Joelle is, but counselor with Caria, former Calgary Family Services, and she'll be speaking about seniors. Welcome, Joelle. And Joelle was here last year as well, so we're very glad. Excuse me. Dennis Sushkin is our last speaker. And Dennis is a full-time counselor and a registered social worker at the Calgary Counseling Center, where he's encountering many clients with very different needs. Now, this is styled as an AMA event, which is Ask Me Anything. And so after these introductory remarks, our panelists are going to speak for about 7 minutes each about what they've seen and experienced as their clients and others attempt to navigate the many mental health issues that the pandemic has made worse. And while our panelists are speaking, viewers can submit questions in the chat room. And as Jared said, there's going to be a text number as well. And then we'll pose those questions to the participants. I've been asked to begin tonight's session with a brief prayer. Christians are inspired by the teachings and presence of Jesus. Jesus, who never turned away from anyone who was troubled. Jesus, who offered the gift of his non-anxious, accepting, and generous self to anyone who asked. For those of us who follow the Christian path, he is our model for grace and peace and healing. If you follow another faith path or tradition or none, we still hope that Jesus' teachings and way of being provide a model of being open to those who struggle. A succinct summary of this Jesus-centered approach can be found in a statement of ministries and mental health written for the Methodist Church in the USA. There we find, our model is Jesus, who calls us to an ethic of love toward all. As Jesus proclaimed the reign of God, his words and proclamations were accompanied by healing every disease and every sickness. And they're quoting Matthew 9:35. Jesus had compassion and healed those besieged by mental illness, many of whom had been despised, rejected, persecuted, and feared by their community. And with that understanding of our view of mental health and the role of Jesus as someone who opens our hearts and minds to those who are in need, please join me in a moment of prayer. Gracious and healing God, we give you thanks for those who offer their gifts to others to help them in times of struggle and mental difficulties. Bless the healers and helpers. Bless each of these people who are here to share their knowledge with us now. Open our hearts and minds to their words of healing and hope and wisdom. Give us a spirit that looks to the future with hope. This we pray in your holy name. Amen. Well, it's just, we've been looking forward to this for quite some time. And so we're going to, without any further ado or any further comments from me, turn to our speakers. And Adam, if you would lead us off, we're very much looking forward to your comments tonight. Thank you.
Great, thanks Jeffrey and Jared and Brent and Brian and everyone else on the mission team who put this together. I think it's really terrific that even in the midst of a virus pandemic that's primarily affecting people's physical health, we're taking time to consider the effect on mental health as well. I think it speaks to a long way that we've come as a society in recognizing that this is a need that needs to be taken into account just as much as physical needs. So I'm really encouraged that we're doing this tonight. I was in a bit of a interesting situation in my practice where the schools shut down almost as soon as the pandemic was declared in the province. So I was kind of out of practice for a few months until schools resumed just over a month ago now. But I've been definitely keeping up on the trends. And now that we're 7 months into the pandemic, at least in North America, we're seeing a few trends emerge in the research literature. It's probably not anyone's surprise to anyone that mental health problems are increasing. Anxiety and depression substance use, all of these things have gone up quite a bit. A telephone survey by the Canadian Psychological Association, this was done back in April, sorry, so fairly early days, found that in the general population, intense feelings of anxiety had increased from about 5% of people up to 20%, so quadrupling. Depression similarly has gone, at that point, had gone from about 4% of the population up to 10% that were self-reporting pretty intense feelings of depression. And so we anticipate that some of that might have started to level off a little bit as people have learned more about the nature of the pandemic and adjusted to this new normal. Certainly, with more information, it may be less fearful for many people than it was in those early days when it seemed like the world was coming to an end. But nevertheless, it's still very prevalent in students that I serve and their families, wanting to ensure that we're staying safe and worrying about all the ramifications that spill over from that. So loss of jobs, loss of contact with loved ones, with friends, sports and other activities that have been put on hold indefinitely. It's a very difficult time for families. I wanted to share briefly just some of the main contributors to mental illness that have been kind of like exacerbating some symptoms in people, which primarily include worrying about the virus for others, even more so than for yourself, social isolation, job loss, which I already mentioned, and interestingly, daily news about the virus. So the more you follow the news about the virus on a daily basis, probably the more it's going to seem quite gloomy, particularly, now that I think many people would agree, well into a second wave in the fall and heading into the winter months ahead. On the other hand, we've established that there are some pretty powerful buffers against mental illness and that promote resilience and mental well-being, including pets. And I can put myself in that category because like half of Calgary, my wife and I got a puppy in the spring, and she's certainly brought a lot of extra joy to our life. Reading is another powerful tool, specifically not anything about the virus, just reading for pleasure. Exercise is a big one, and it should come as no surprise, but maintaining communication with others, especially those who are outside of your household, those that you don't get to see on a regular basis in person anymore. A study by the American Psychological Association found that the perception of social support was a powerful deterrent against feelings of loneliness and depression. So the more that people felt connected to others, the less likely they were to report those symptoms. And the exciting thing with that is that that was a pretty broad definition. So that included everything from grandchildren who made more of an intentional effort to regularly communicate with their grandparents or with other extended family members who they might not see or talk to on a regular basis anyways. So they're actually having more contact, all the way to communal acts of solidarity. You think of the people who gathered on their front porches or balconies to show support every night at 7 o'clock for healthcare workers. And it really conveyed the sense that, we're all in this together, we're all going through this, and we will all one day pull through this, whenever that day may be. So going into the winter months, I think that will be particularly important to keep in mind. Now, for kids and families specifically, there are some unique opportunities, I think, because we know that, in general, children, younger people are less susceptible to severe forms of the virus. And it doesn't mean that, we can be reckless or take stupid risks or anything like that. But it does mean that families might be positioned to help out in ways that might be riskier for other segments of the population. So, now that Calgary is probably halfway through the 3 weeks or so that we get between the end of summer and the first snowfall, we can start thinking about ways that families can offer acts of service to those in the community around them. And also in doing so, really live out the calling that Jesus modeled for us in terms of being a servant to others, even or maybe especially during difficult times. So just briefly, some of those ideas could include things like grocery shopping, Christmas shopping. We do a lot of online shopping, but not everything can be ordered online. Some things still need to be picked up in store, and that can be a lot less daunting for a young family to do for those around them who for whom that might pose much more of a safety risk. And then, of course, mailing. I used to work at the post office when I was in college, and every Christmas season we'd be lined up out the door, and I wonder what that's going to look like this year. But being able to offer that small act of service for a neighbor who wants to send something special to loved ones on the other side of the country could go a long way. Again, like with winter coming, something like shoveling snow for your neighbors. This is not something that needs to be limited to pandemic times, but certainly would be very much appreciated now, particularly as over the last several months, a lot of people have had the opportunity to connect more with their neighbors than they ever have before. So that act of service, combined perhaps with a distanced conversation outside the doorstep afterwards, it could really help to lift someone's spirits. Volunteering with aid agencies such as the food bank and shelters that are experiencing tremendous need. This is just a really great way to model for children what it is to help the needy, to remember those who might be less fortunate than you, and to do it at a time when their services might be needed more than ever. And another thing that came to mind for me was I really, really hope we're going to see this a lot this Christmas season. Maybe door-to-door caroling is going to make a comeback. I don't know if there might be some choir members watching tonight who are frustrated that they haven't gotten to share their gifts in the last several months. But I mean, if I hear about door-to-door carolers popping up around the city, you better believe I'm going to be on the lookout for them. You probably don't want me singing, but I would just love to hear renditions of Silent Night ringing out through the neighborhood. Again, none of these need to be limited just to the times that we're going through right now. But I think that they would go perhaps even further than they normally would to lifting people's spirits and just helping establish that sense of community and staving off some of the worst aspects of isolation and fear and depression that this pandemic has thrust upon us. One last thing that I wanted to mention is the research shows that during times of upheaval, in other circumstances like natural disasters or political unrest in various parts of the world, something that can be very helpful for children is to maintain whatever family routines or rituals that you might have previously been following. So that includes everything from having meals together at a regular time to kind of like following weekly schedules like church on Sunday mornings kind of thing. And also maybe spending more time together as a family, doing devotions or having prayer time, and really bolstering that, that spiritual wellness that is harder, not impossible, but harder to receive from our typical sources at this time, such as church and youth group and Sunday school and all those wonderful things. And also just reminding kids that this is something new for everybody right now. Like we've never had to live through kind of global pandemic before. Those of us who are currently alive, but this isn't the first time that we as a people have faced this kind of thing. And God is with us, and He's not taking a break, and we can take some comfort in that, I hope. So I hope I tried to do my best to kind of stick to the time limit. But
No, that's absolutely wonderful. It's like about 3 blogs and a half there. It's really beautiful because
it's rapid fire.
it's both the issues and the statistics, which I think are really key for us to understand and to hear. But on the other hand, you haven't stopped there, and you've said, "Listen, here's some things that can be done, and they're not impossible things. They're things that most of us could look at and could say, yeah, I could sure put that into my life." And so I think that's just great. We'll wait for questions and see where those are, but I think we'll move right on. Thank you so much for starting us off with such a thoughtful presentation, Adam. Much appreciated. Ernie, we'd like to go to you next, and we would be very pleased to hear from your perspective how you're experiencing and how you're diagnosing mental health concerns, and what sort of possible hope you're finding in your communities.
Yeah, thank you. With the Aboriginal Friendship Center, we work to a large degree with the homeless population, and that's Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And so we deal with a lot of the our people that are facing addiction challenges. And so with this pandemic, it's taken a real effect, a real negative effect in many ways to the street population. And it's evident, I think, more and more as time goes on. See, we're located right next to the Olympic Plaza, and we're in a partnership there with Alberta Health Services, Canadian Mental Health, and from those 3 groups, we have outreach programs and outreach workers that touch base every day with our population there in our part of the city. And we've seen an increase in violent episodes amongst that population. And a lot of it has to do with, of course, the frustration that people are feeling. They can't access services quite like they used to before the pandemic. For example, our place there, located in the Source, we can't allow the public to come in. And so that was a large part of our link to the community, was that face-to-face contact, and it's no longer there. And so our community members, they still suffer from issues related to homelessness, poverty, addictions, all these things. And a lot of times we were able to intercede on their behalf and assist them in finding some answers, I guess, for themselves, whether it be finding an apartment, finding a place to live, being able to meet basic needs like food and clothing, those types of things. And it's more and more difficult now. So what essentially we've had to do with our outreach program and our COVID-19 task force that AFCC established back in March to meet this pandemic, we had to take a whole look at how we did things and our strategy prior to the pandemic. And so now, rather than have people come in, we have to go out to the communities now. And so we have a food hamper program for a lot of our elderly clients, families that are caught in the system as well, people that are involved with the Alberta Works program and things like that. And the need is rising in terms of getting the cost for food, being able to feed their families, and those types of things. So we tried our best, and I think we've been successful for the most part in making sure that those needs are being met. We deliver hampers, like I say, to the needy families, but also hot lunch programs, hot meal programs to our elderly population as well. And so we've done I think an admirable job in meeting the needs, continuing to meet the needs of our communities, in face of this pandemic. But also, more important, we provide that outreach counseling service, and we do our walkthroughs every day through Olympic Plaza and that surrounding area, down onto the riverfront and down in towards the DI, places like that. And we spend a lot of time speaking with our community members, because the problems go on. The problems are still there, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not. They're still facing issues of addictions, just all the problems that go along with being homeless. And so we provide that service to them, and for the most part, the reception we've got has been on a positive note. And so there's been instances, where we've had to deal with unruly community members, and again, these are people that are feeling the frustration of all this because they can't access those programs like we were able to provide in the past. So it's been a tough road for us, but it's been very educational for us. And I think if this, we should ever encounter something like this again, we're certainly going to be prepared for it, I believe, just from going through what we've gone through in the past 6 months. We continue to look after the population out there, our elders, because they're very important to us. They're very, very important to us. They are the knowledge keepers, and they are the ones that we rely on for direction, for their prayers. And we must continue to make sure that our elder population is well looked after. And so we continue to try to make cultural programs available to them. We're going to be launching our our language programs again, the Blackfoot language and the Cree language as well. And it provides an opportunity for our members to go online and to socialize, because that's a big part of our community, is the social aspect of it. We gather for all kinds of reasons. Any excuse we may see to get together and to share stories, to share laughs, to share food, to share in dancing, those kinds of things. Our people are there, and we have a community here in Calgary that's very culturally rich, and people that practice these customs, and it's all a big plus for us. So we try to keep those things ongoing as well, and we try to appeal to I guess all aspects of our all age groups in our community. And speaking from that, the cultural aspect again, we've taken this time to take our community members out to the surrounding First Nations, or out to places like Drumheller, to collect medicines that we use in our agency. And I know other Indigenous organizations in the city rely heavily on those medicines as well, and as part of their counseling approaches and their educational approaches as well. So we go out and we engage with our community members and allow them that opportunity to go out there and be on the land. If anything, it's a real treat for them to be able to take time away from all this that we experience daily, all this isolation, all the paranoia that's attached to all of that, and just to be out and crawling around in the trees and in the shrubs and picking sweetgrass and picking sage is a godsend for a lot of our community members. We we opened up our ceremonies again, our sweat lodge, and we again engaged the community in collecting wood, collecting rocks, and just to give them an opportunity to be out there and away from the city, and to be able to breathe, to be able to do things that are feeding their spirit. And so it's a big part of it in terms of coming to grips with what is happening to us, not only the Indigenous community, but our society as a whole. And so this is an opportunity for them to find ways to deal with the isolation, to deal with the anxiety, the isolation, the depression, all these things that go with that. And so it does wonders for them. Many of our people, and this is something that's been a part of our community for years, is that a large majority of the population that we work with are suffering from mental health issues. And so you take a pandemic that takes away access to services, and that paranoia, all the frustration is going to take a major step in the wrong direction sometimes. And so we have to make sure that they're looked after, because I've always believed that we can't really move ahead as a community unless we're addressing the needs of all people, and to ensure that we're making an attempt to not leave anybody out, and not allow people to fall through the cracks and suffer needlessly, when we have a very vibrant community in Calgary, and I think we have a caring community. And I'm speaking for Calgary as a whole, not just the First Nations community. But I think it's times like this when all society is going to come together, because I believe deep down inside that there's goodness in all of us. There's goodness in all of us, regardless of what our ethnicity may be. There's we were all brought up in a good way, our parents and our grandparents, our great grandparents ensured that we had that. And it's times like this when we have to rely on those teachings and those values that we grew up with and be able to put them in action. So I believe we're doing that and doing it to the best of our abilities with what we have to work with. And if anything, this pandemic has taught us that we have to come together. Our agencies, our community have to come together. We have to work together, whether we're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. We have to come together, and that's the only way we're going to provide that safety net for our less fortunate members of our society. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity to be able to share what we have from our community. But we're no stranger to difficult times, and this is just another episode that we have to battle through. But through that, we're going to learn some really good stuff about ourselves and learn some good things about other people as well. And so it's going to bring us all closer together, I believe. So thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. I'm really glad we've recorded this because I hope your grandkids get to hear this. I hope other people in the city get to hear what you just said. It's beautiful, strong words. And I was thinking about the sort of the two poles. You're saying feed the body and feed the soul. And we need to feed the body. We need to take care of the least of these. We need to take care of everybody. But then we need to feed the soul. We need, and get out on the land. We all need that, but particularly those who are trained in harvesting traditional medicines. I like your image of them being out there getting the sage and the sweetgrass, and So thank you so much, Ernie. It's really wonderful to hear what your words. Thank you.
It all sounds good until you kneel in one of those cow patties, eh? When you're in the pasture somewhere.
I think we've all done that. Yeah. You're going, oops. Well, before we move on to Joelle, I just want to let folks know, let the panelists know that we have had a question come in. So I'll pose it to you. I don't want you to answer it just yet, but I'm doing it for two reasons. One, to let the folks who are watching know that we are getting the questions and we'll feed them on to the panel. And two, to give the panel a chance to think about this. And somebody at the end will be able to say, yeah, I want to handle that one. So there's one question so far in the text, and this person says, for extroverts, we've been separated from coworkers, friends, and community groups like church. How do we keep finding positivity when it seems like there's no connections to make? So I'm just going to let that sit for a bit, if you wouldn't mind. And now, I also want to recognize, and I think, most people will realize that the panelists here have had full days. They've been counseling, they've been dealing with people, they've been helping people in our community. So I want to just again thank them for being here, and for Zoom is in March. It was quite stimulating, and in October a little less so. But anyway, thank you for pushing through the Zoom fatigue. Joelle, we are thrilled to have you, and we would love to have your perspectives on working with seniors and whatever else you'd like to bring to bear with respect to mental health and your clients.
Thank you so much. I am a long form kind of girl, so I have a PowerPoint. I'm going to try and share my screen.
Okay.
Let me know if you can see this.
Yeah, there she goes.
Oh.
Beautiful.
I just gotta play with it a little bit.
You can do your you can show your, yep, just show it.
Boom. Okay, perfect. So, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little bit today because, as you mentioned, I've been talking all day long, so bear with me a little bit. But I really appreciate being here, and really appreciate that these events are being put on, because I think they are helping people and they're reaching people in a unique way. And so thanks for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about my practice with seniors and the impact that I've seen on seniors regarding COVID-19. So just to be really clear, I don't work with seniors in care or in long-term care or anything like that. So the seniors that I work with are community members living in their own homes, living in apartments, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think there is a whole lot to say about long-term care, but that's not where I'm headed, just to clarify. But so I'm very proud to work for an agency called Caria. We've been in the community for, I think, 110 years this year is our anniversary, and we have programs for all ages and stages of life. And I'm part of the older adult team, and so we do outreach for seniors. So we're actually a network. There's a network of 4 or 5 different agencies in the city that just do outreach with seniors. So and it's kind of separated demographically. So if you phone 403 seniors, or if you phone 211, you probably will get connected with somebody who is going to connect you with the appropriate agency given what part of the city that you live in. So that's just the most kind of snapshot I can give you about what we do. So we've got a few other programs as well, but I'm just going to speak about the Way In network. So just a brief background on what we do pre-COVID is I guess our main role is to do really thorough assessments of folks. So we try to figure out, what do they need? Are they receiving all of their pensions? Do they need food? Do they have crisis needs? What's their mental health like? How's their cognitive health? Do they need things that are going to help them in their day-to-day life, that's going to keep them safe in their homes independently? So maybe they need a walker, or bath bars in their shower so they don't slip, just kind of a little bit of everything. And then we also do some complex case management. So oftentimes we'll get phone calls from neighbors, family members, sometimes building managers saying, I'm not sure what to do with this person. There's a hoarding issue, or I think they have dementia, or I think that their mental illness has decompensated to a place where they're no longer able to live independently. And we try to figure out how to help that person, how to really respect their dignity and their autonomy, and kind of keep them safe. Like we're sort of a jack of all trades, you could say. One of our primary underpinnings that we do with everything in all of our programs and across our agency is we really try to prevent social isolation. As I think definitely Adam talked about, and I think Ernie, you mentioned it as well, is that social connection is so instrumental, and it's actually been determined as one of the determinants of health. So it's a protective factor in that if you have people around you and you have connection, just in particular, if you're a senior, that means maybe you have someone that can take you to the doctor if you no longer drive, or that could bring you groceries if you're not able to get out, or just somebody that can notice if something seems off. Hey, Bill, are you doing okay? How are things going? Somebody that's gonna just keep you connected, keep your mind stimulated, keep you social, keep you thinking, keep you feeling that support and that connection. So it's so important. And I really think if people take away anything from tonight, COVID, whatever population we're talking about, it's just that social connection is really, it makes your life better and it keeps you alive longer. And I could talk about that all night, but I'm trying to go fast, so I won't. But some of the common phone calls that we would get pre-COVID would be people that are looking just for help applying for their pensions, or they're looking for seniors housing, or maybe they've run out of medications, or they don't have dentures, or they need glasses, or they don't drive anymore and they're not sure how to get around without using a taxi all the time, and they just need a bit of help. Or the mental health pieces that we've talked about. So some of the more common ones that we see in our senior population, although any one of them can touch anybody at any age, but we commonly see depression and anxiety and things like that that are related to a lot of losses, because unfortunately seniors tend to face a lot of losses, whether that's of people around them, friends and family passing away, relationships dying, their social circle gets smaller, maybe they're losing their mobility, their independence, all those things. So we see that stuff pre-COVID. And then the whole world changed, and all of a sudden everyone is told to stay home, to stay away from people, to close up your business, to don't socialize, to be afraid, and to essentially shut down the whole world. So back to that 403 seniors phone line, which is where we get all of our intakes from mostly. So we're kind of partnered with the distress center. All of our calls come in the same, well, I guess not the same building now that we're all working from home, but it's all through the same system. So we get a lot of stats and we share that information with each other. So our calls in April 2020 were doubled from April 2019. And that was true also for me and June. By July, it was a little bit closer to average, but they were still higher. And in addition to that, we were taking a huge volume of crisis calls. So people that were just afraid, that were like, I'm not sure what's happening today. How am I going to get my groceries if I can't leave my house because I'm an isolated senior and I'm staying home? How do I get my medications? All of that kind of stuff. They were asking about like CERB payments and the funding, the extra funding that came out for seniors, all of that stuff. So there were definitely the standard concerns. We definitely were still hearing that. People still needed food. They still needed medications. They still needed to find housing. They still needed to apply for their pensions, all of that stuff. But now, because the whole world shut down as we know it, so people that had regular doctor's appointments or that went to day programs, which is kind of like a supportive semi-medical place where you can go and spend the day and they take care of your needs and they can assess you, that's all gone now. Things like, I'm not sure if people have ever heard of the Move and Mingle program. It's a really popular one with Alberta Healthcare, and it's designed to prevent falls for seniors. So that it was like an exercise program, but it's so much more than that, because as we may know that if a senior falls and breaks their hip, that is a game changer. So fall prevention is a big deal. So all of those things were gone. So now there's just this tremendous amount of uncertainty and fear and just kind of around in the world. So reports in Calgary. So we got this one from the Distress Center. Calgary had an 84% increase in crisis calls, which were related to suicide from the same period of time in 2019. So that's very significant. Some of the top issues that were discussed in relation to that, the calls that had discussion of suicide, were anxiety, depression, loneliness, and isolation. And all of that was COVID related. And just to clarify, this 84% reflects all age groups. It's not specifically seniors, but seniors were certainly a part of that statistic. So while the rest of the world may have been able to stay in touch on Zoom or the internet or Facebook, many seniors don't have computers and they might not have family. And so they're not able to connect like this. And I know a great number of folks that used to get their socialization fix by going and having a coffee in the coffee shop and just chatting to whoever came in. And now all of a sudden that's all gone. And there's a real fear in leaving your apartment, especially because, as you know, as we know, many seniors already had very compromised health concerns or just greater reasons to be at home and not exposing themselves to greater risks. So really specific niche of issues for seniors, and how this COVID pandemic and how it played out in the world, it really put them at a significant risk for greater isolation than I think any other group that I could think of in Calgary at least. And studies actually show that isolation is worse for your health than smoking 5 cigarettes a day. I'm sure many of you have heard that stat. So things that, like, we've spent years and years encouraging our seniors to go out and stay active and join stuff and do groups. And so things like painting classes or chair yoga or discussion groups, all of those things that we've told them are instrumental to their well-being, we just took them all away. So it's a very big deal. So that said, during this time, our roles as outreach workers certainly changed. Obviously, we didn't have any more home visits, but at least triple the hours we were spending on the phone. So we're taking the crisis calls from the 403 seniors line, as well as our active clients we already had, and then any new referrals. So because we may have been the only contact for many of these isolated seniors, and their only kind of like safe place to talk to and to discuss their experience. And in addition to that, we also became more practical supports, kind of bending rules in what we normally would do with our clients. So during this time, we delivered more than 500 food hampers. We packaged 10,000 masks and sanitizer kits, and just try to figure out how to keep seniors safe in their home as best supported as possible. And I think I said earlier, I'm really proud to work for Caria, and I think that's why. It's that I just work for a team of people that they see a need and they're just willing to just figure out what it's going to take to meet it. And I think, like you said, Ernie, like that, I feel like that is true of people in general. If they look hard enough inside themselves, that desire is there. And it's such a beautiful and inspiring and empowering thing when you see it happen. So next time you see those signs that say, thank the doctors and the nurses, I feel like we should pull out our Sharpies and add a few other professions on there as well. But anyway, so my thoughts in terms of like, how is this going to play out long-term would be that it's a trauma. It's certainly a collective trauma for all of us. And I honestly, my perspective is that we're still kind of in it. It's not, there's no end date to it. It's not like the floods or the fires where it was an event and it was finished and we could sort of take stock of what's the damage, because we don't know. We're still here. So I think we won't really see the true impact for years down the road. As was mentioned earlier, as the cold weather comes, there's further isolation. We tend to worry about our seniors being isolated in the winter months anyway, because if you have really compromised health concerns, that cold weather hits you in the lungs and it's a big deal, or slips and falls on the ice. So we're trying to figure out, we're really, really looking at that winter isolation part, because it's going to be really bad. And then as well, just we don't know with the economy how things are going, if they're going to be major cuts to social agencies and all the bad news. But that said, on a positive note, as I think was mentioned, I am so humbled by some of the stories I've heard from some of my really compromised, really unwell and seniors that people had initially suspected would not be doing very well, and they're doing really well because they're incredibly resilient and they've been through things before. They've been through other illnesses. I have some folks from the Asian community who have were through SARS, and they've got skills that we need to honor and recognize. And I think there's a lot that they could teach us about how do we get through this stuff when it's like the whole world is a little bit crazy and we have to come together and help each other. Being through wars, all that stuff. The other thing, I don't think I put it on my slide here. I didn't put it on my slide here. Go back. Anyway, it's making us as a community of helping agencies much more creative in that we're finding ways to reach people without doing face-to-face, or we're doing face-to-face 6 feet apart with a mask on, but we're figuring out how do we make this work in creative ways. So I think that's wonderful. And people that usually don't seem to be part of the traditional helping agencies are stepping up. So for example, a lot of our seniors in the East Village community were given these little kits where they had like a planter pod and a bunch of little succulent things that was all donated, and people dropped off at their door, knock on the door, run away, drop off the stuff so that there's no contact sort of thing. But then we all went together, whether it was a conference call, whatever, and we all built these little terrariums together. So we're finding ways to connect in unusual times. And my kind of last thoughts are that the real virus is this panic virus where we all become really hyper vigilant and we see our fellow humans as competition to survive. And we start doing things like buying every last package of toilet paper and stuff. So I think that's what we really, as just a greater community, need to be mindful of, and remember to be kind and at least calm, and just know that we all handle things differently. And truly, we all handle things differently on different days. And we've all seen people that are doing things like, for example, in the grocery store, that it just rubs our fur the wrong way and we feel like doing one of these, but we don't really know what they're going through, other than we do know that they're going through this and this is hard. So if you can't even be kind, just be calm, take a deep breath. Things that we can do for ourselves: ask for help, reach out, ask for help. It's there. different strokes for different folks. A lot of people like to have like really formal support. Some people like to have the counseling session when you're in the car together. Whatever you need, I think people intrinsically, they already know what helps them because other things that they've been through in life. So just reach out, ask for help, figure out what it is. I like dog pictures. So here's one more. I'm just going to say exactly what you said, Adam. We need to turn off the news. Like, we just need to turn off the news. I think that's a really great mental health tip that I would say to everybody. Be kind to each other, be kinder to yourself. Turn off the news. I frequently remind my clients of these things, but they apply to everyone, certainly me included. And I blasted through that as fast as I could. Thank you so much. Any questions? Boom. I'm going to stop sharing.
We're going to have to.
Yes.
That was, well, look at that. There's clapping hands. And one of the, I mean, you said a lot, which is wonderful. But one of the things that you talked about is your own sense of fulfillment. You mentioned it twice, your own sense of feeling satisfied. And I think that's really, really important that in our engaged persona in society, that we have some sort of role, right? And that's what we're talking about. And we can do that with seniors as well, you know. But anyway, those are really creative and wonderful thoughts. By the way, I think I've downloaded and uploaded apps, news apps 5 times. I just put the New York Times app back on, and I should take it off again because it's just terrible, you know, stuff like that. Anyway, so, you know, there you go. Now, certainly last but not least, Dennis, you've been very patient, but I think on the other hand, we've all been enlightened and heard some wonderful presentations, and we're looking forward to yours.
Thank you very much for organizing and having me here. I feel like it's really hard to follow like that, such a thorough, like all three presentations, so it's really, really wonderful. And I'll try to add, and we'll try not to repeat some of the things because some of this might be an overlap, but I'll share a little bit more about my context, where I come from, because I think it shaped my perspective on the thing. And I'll share a couple of things about just the general trajectory that I saw, trajectory of people's reaction through the last 6 months, and a couple of themes that came up. So I am working as a full-time counselor at the Calgary Counseling Center. My main role is just to meet with people, help them figure out what changes they want to do and how to make those changes. We've been lucky, we've been open through the pandemic, through the whole time. I had to like count, because I think one of the side effects of pandemic for me is like time became liquid. Like, I don't know, was it like a week ago, a month ago, or last year? So I had to count like how many months were we in the pandemic. So look, it will be 7 months on October 16th. We were open, and I've been working full time since then. When it comes to, and I work with generalist population, that's another piece of it. I do not have a specific population I work with. I work with families, individuals, seniors, youth, kids, families, couples. Like, it's whoever needs help, they can reach out and come to the center. So I think when as I was reflecting on the general response, I think there were a couple of stages in the last 6 months that I've noticed. There was this initial response, like mid-March, for about a month, when I was like, it was totally real, when we had this huge panic about toilet paper. I was like, I feel like it was just like 6 months ago, but at the same time, it feels like it was a while ago. But we were in this like very acute response when for a couple of weeks, for almost a month, people were just like trying to take care of the basic needs, food, shelter. And I think some of the communities are still in this mode. I really appreciated some of the thoughts and perspectives that Ernie shared earlier. Then like from mid-April or beginning of May till midsummer, people like was more of an adjusting stage, when people were, okay, that's the new normal. How do we do life together? How do we work? How do we parent? How do we homeschool people? I think from midsummer till end of August, we had a bit of a lighter time when the numbers were lower, things were getting better. The weather was great. A lot of people were just like being outside, and it was a huge component to people's mental health. Like when people can go out and be outside, hike, just spend time outside, it was a huge relief for a lot of people. And I think now we are back into this unknown territory. Started September. I think there are a number of things that contributed. Like the school year started. It's usually a big marker for a lot of people. And I'm pretty sure Adam, your world is different now again. Everyone is at school. We're trying to do homeschooling, but right now we're not sure. Like second wave, what everyone is anxiously watching the numbers. When it comes to the themes that I've noticed so far in my work with people, I think I was quite surprised actually, because it was such a wide range of responses from the very beginning. For some people, the transition to working from home, being in this quarantine state, was a good thing. Some, like I think some of the introverts thrived on this situation. Like, well, I can just stay home, I can stay and work from here, and it's like it worked for them. And for some people, it was a real struggle. Like there was like, and I think one of the main components, main factors that contributed to their response is just what was happening in the environment as well. It's not just how we are wired, how much social interaction we need, but what's happening in the environment. And what I mean by this is how much social support do people have? Do they have regular people that they can connect with? What's happening with what was happening with their job security? Did they have the job that they can rely on, get that paycheck that comes in? What was their arrangement for this weird work-home life? Like, I know for me in particular, it was a really tough transition. I'm an extrovert in the first place, plus working and living and having fun in the same place. It's like, can be no fun. Let's put it this way. I think technology played a huge role in it. Like the technical capabilities. Are we able to do the things were we able to do those things that we used to do, like work, connect with people? Like I really appreciated all those examples that Joel, you provided. For seniors, most of the time they don't have enough technical support, or just technical skills to connect. And I think another big factor for people, like an environmental factor, was did they have children at home? Navigating a pandemic when you're a single person versus navigating a pandemic when you have to work and homeschool 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter how many children, it's a very different environment. And all of those things came into place. I think right now there's another interesting element to people's well-being in general, but the whole, all those like wider cultural tensions start entering the home lives for people when you have like two people living together, but they might see this pandemic very differently. And how do they navigate this whole situation? Well, do we wear a mask when we go outside, or don't we wear a mask? When you have two people like see those things differently, this can have a very direct effect and impact on their well-being. I think another cool research that recently came out, School of Public Policies at the University of Calgary, they published a research that highlighted this correlation between the economic situation in the province with people's level of stress and distress. And they saw a very direct correlation between those two things. What's going on in their life with the environment, with the economic situation, because like it has an effect. Another, I think, theme that comes up regularly in my daily work, I think what the pandemic did, it accelerated and amplified a lot of processes that were present before this whole thing started. And I think it plays out on so many different levels, on the good thing, or like on the good side of things and on the bad side of things as well. But to give a couple of examples, I think like even technology, I think this is can be a good example. Like, I don't think anyone thought it was possible to shift to like a full like remote work for a lot of people, like in such a quick period of time. Like for some companies, some agencies, like it was a matter of like a couple of weeks or a month when they kind of shifted completely to remote work. I think another piece of the process, and I think that's more of my personal theory, so take it with a grain of salt, please. But I think Zoom, FaceTime, all those online platforms, before the pandemic, they used to be a place where people connect with their loved ones, with friends, families. So for people who are used to use this kind of medium for regular interactions, as a place where people can be open and vulnerable, it was an easier transition to like, it made an easier transition for me when I step into this place where people are used to being open. Then it's easier for them to work with a professional who can help them. And vice versa, for people who were like not familiar and not open to using technology, it was a harder transition in general. I think another point that I will not touch on right now a lot, but what Adam mentioned in the beginning in terms of rates of anxiety and feelings of depression, like on the individual level, that was another thing that was very amplified. And yeah, it was way more prevalent. And another piece, and I don't want this to, because I think all the panelists talked about the social supports, and I don't want to dismiss it. And I think this is a very key factor. But another theme that came up, the pandemic, I think it affected more families and couples because they have to navigate this world, and there are a lot of moving pieces for them, starting from like they have to work and live and parent and rest and maybe minister to other people from the same place. And they have to wear so many different hats at the same time. And the distinction between all those roles became less clear. Like for me, for example, it was a very clear kind of, I wake up and I commute to work, I commute back home, I go somewhere else. But right now it's like my day-to-day, for example, kind of, I woke up, I did them home chores, I did like I made a couple of steps, I arrived at work, I finished work, I didn't even move. I moved to this meeting, which before the pandemic, I would have had to travel. There are pluses and minuses again, this too. And the last piece in terms of themes, I think, what I noticed, and I really like a number of people today use the word resilience. And I really appreciated this because this is a source of resilience for people. But one of the key factors to navigating this kind of change, I think that what contributes to the resilience is this sense of hope. And I was really intrigued because Jeffrey, you started today with talking about hope. And I'm drawn to this idea because I was doing some reading, and I came across she's a therapist from UK. She recently published a book on change in general. And she uses a very, I think, helpful definition of hope. She sees that hope is not just a feeling. There is a component of emotions. Other emotions support the hope. But hope also is about having a plan, like being able to identify what's happening, being able to set some kind of target for yourself. Then the next step, part of hope, is like being able to create some kind of plan and being flexible about this plan that you're creating, because that's another thing that can make it or break it, your whole situation. She adds, like, her final component for her is the self-belief. And here I wanted to kind of, I think it's not just self-belief in terms of I can do it, but there needs to be a bit more than just believe in yourself, which is also like, I'm excited that we're having this conversation in this setting, because yeah, there needs to be other components to building hope. Yeah, and I think I'll leave it there for today. We'll see, we can see if there are any questions, but
that's wonderful and rich. And thank you for coming back around to that theme of hope. One of the things I think you offered to us is the interpersonal dynamics, which I think we're all aware of, but you're the one I think who named them most clearly. And I think, your example about the couple where, they might have different comfort levels about mask wearing and that sort of thing. That's a very real issue. And it's kind of symptomatic of the kind of things where I think we're negotiating and navigating this unknown terrain. So thank you very much for that. We did have another question come in, and I would like to move to the questions now. And this is open to all the panelists, and then if anyone, if this opens things up. Now, this is a rather long and quite thoughtful question. So if you want to jump on the extrovert question first, that's okay. But this one also came in, and I'll read it to you. As things started to open up, a lot of controversy surrounded each step because everyone is in a different situation and people have different risk tolerances. How can we help promote kindness and understanding of this dimension of diversity so that we don't judge the choices that people are making for the near future? For those of us who have a need or a tendency to plan, what kinds of things can we do to cope with the persistent uncertainty? It would seem to me that what makes the pandemic so hard is not only the fear for safety, but also the shattering of the illusion that we can kind of predict, and I think there might have been another couple of words there, but predict the future, let's say. So a very thoughtful question, and I see a lot of nodding heads. Someone want to tackle either one of those ones? Joelle, yeah.
Just my initial thoughts are kind of that I think there is an answer embedded in the question, in that, like, whoever wrote it, thank you. It's a very good question. And I think you have a lot of self-awareness in that question, because I think it reflects that you kind of understand where a lot of your own maybe fears and nervousness comes from. And I think, like, even for me, I mean, I'm a pretty laid back person and my comfort zone changes every single day. Flip a coin, it doesn't matter. And for seemingly the things you mentioned, that things are changing and that it seems like, some of the procedures, I guess we'll call them, don't really seem to make sense to me. And some people think they're great and some people don't. And how do we have compassion and how do we have kindness in that? And I think, honestly, I think that the way to start that is to have that for yourself, and to just really let yourself, if you're reacting strongly and you're really apprehensive to something that's happening, like, just accept that that's where you're at and don't judge yourself for that feeling. Because I think if you're really comfortable kind of owning, like, I am not comfortable with this right now, then that makes it okay. I think it makes it easier to just see, okay, this is where I'm at. That's where that person's at. I don't agree, but I'm paying attention to, like, just me here, and, like, what do I need in this situation and whatever. Because it is so hard. I mean, human beings, we love the illusion that we are in charge of everything, and we're really not, and we don't know. And so that's just my initial thought. I'll let somebody else jump on that, because I'm sure there's lots of thoughts.
Thank you, Joelle. That's a great start for that. Please, we're just opening it up now. And really, that question or the extrovert question or anything else that you'd like to sort of expand on with each other's points, that would be absolutely wonderful at this point.
I'd like to comment on the kindness and compassion. I was very fortunate. I am very fortunate that I was brought up with my culture, and I was brought up around ceremonies. And these ceremonies really drive home the importance of the value systems that each and every culture has to offer. And I believe we all grew up with these values: loving and caring and sharing and showing compassion, those types of things, all those good things. And during this time, it's been just a continuation of how I've tried to live my life, and in terms of how to treat people, how to be able to walk through this world in a good way, and above all else, to strive to be the best that I can be, to show the best part of me, to exhibit the best, very best that I have to people. And it's something that's driven home by something that my mother shared with me, and she said this time and time again, and would always remind me. And she spoke about it she referred to it in our language, in the Cree language, and she said it this way: "Danse egi pesi nichen." She said, when you near your adult life and your elder years, ask yourself this: what kind of a human being were you? What kind of life did you live? And so I've always tried to walk that way, because I'll love my mother till the day I die. And her words were like gold to me. And as I'm getting older, more and more, I think about those things. I think about her words, and especially about the teaching she had towards being judgmental. That you have to respect the fact that not everybody will have this degree of understanding and compassion as some other people. And you have to look at their life situation and what caused them to maybe go off the track in some areas. So you can't judge people for their reactions, especially in times like this, because maybe they didn't have access to the teachings that we have, that were driven home and affirmed by our ceremonies, because our ceremonies reinforce the value system of First Nations people. And so I'm very fortunate in that sense. And so that's what's kept me in the game all these years, in doing the work I do with people. And I've been at it for 40 years. I began with the Friendship Center about 40 years ago, 1978. And it grew from there, and I kept going back. But all these other positions that I've held in the community have always been working with people and families. And so, yeah, good question, and just my insight into those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those teachings. They're very rich, very, very, very powerful. Friends, we're about 5 minutes from where we probably want to wrap things up. I'm just wondering if anyone has, there's still that question about the extrovert that's been hanging there. If someone wants to handle that, or if anybody feels that there's something that they've gained from another person's presentation, or something that you want to expand on your own. We've just got a couple of minutes to do that, and I wonder if I'll just open the floor to that.
Well, I could try tackling the extrovert question. It really resonated with me as a fellow extrovert, and so I'm kind of just speaking from my place in life, and I don't know the circumstances of the person who asked that question, but I'm reminded of the Scandinavian proverb, like, there is no bad weather, only bad clothing. And so even with winter coming, and our indoor opportunities to gather are going to be limited, like, I'm probably going to be investing in a good parka to just like hang out in backyards, and still be able to see people as much as possible in a safe way. I'm moving next week. The last time that I moved, I had a housewarming party within a week of moving, when there were like 30 or 40 people, and I'm not going to get to do that this time. So it's it's on my mind for sure right now. Another thing too is, I don't know if public health guidelines have changed recently around the idea of cohorting, but if there is a very small select number of people that you feel close to, where you can kind of make a mutual pledge to limit your physical contact with others, and that you feel reasonably safe, still being able to visit with one another over the winter months. I think even just that connection with a very limited number of people is still going to go a long way. once we're no longer able to go outside and do things as easily. That's my 2 cents on that. And I just also, Jeffrey, to your point, I think this has been terrific for me to hear all these other perspectives, and I'm just really blown away by the caliber of insights that I've gotten to hear tonight. So yeah, I feel really grateful for that.
Well, I'm not sure who it was that talked about our city, but maybe we all did. But basically, you know, I think we can be proud of our city. I think Ernie, you started talking about that, and fact is that there's all these creative solutions and all these good souls and good initiatives, and so I think we can be proud of that. And we have to survive and to thrive, we have to have a sense of purpose, and maybe that's that notion of hope coming back again. And I like, you know, maybe I put it as a hope chest. You know, you got to put something in your hope chest, and it says that we are believing in each other and believing in ourselves and believing in compassion and kindness. I don't want to have the last word though, so I would offer it to one person. Jared, you've been just the kind technical support person. Do you want to offer us a last word and maybe close us with a prayer? Unless, Dennis, did you have a word you wanted to offer? Jared, would you, any words, and then would you close us?
Well, I'm not the person with any deep wisdom in this, but I mean, the conversation around compassion and the conversation around understanding not only this moment that we're in, but naming the fear, naming the reality. I've appreciated deeply. I've been following the chat and trying to listen at the same time. But thank you so much for all being here tonight. This has always been a neat project between the pastoral care team and the mission team, as we kind of think about what is it that we're called to do as we kind of consider our role in, as a church, in connecting not just with the people around us, but with the people that make us up as a place. Somebody said once that the church is the only institution that exists for the benefit of its non-members. And I think we got to hear some of that tonight. So thank you so much. I will happily close us with a word of prayer tonight.
Have we got a grandchild there? Who's that?
Yes, this is Odin Wolf. This is my grandson, 4 years old.
Good to see you. We're going to have a little prayer, Odin, okay?
Well, let's pray, and I'll send us out with a blessing as well.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, as we go. And I feel so rich. Thank you so much.
Let's pray. God of infinite mercy and grace, in this strange time of year where we find ourselves not only starting to be more busy, but also our busyness seems and is different. We thank you for this joy that we can find in missing out, but we also thank you for the grace and mercy that says we don't have to have everything worked out all the time. We don't have to be okay all the time. We don't have to be in control all the time. And so for your mercy in our moments, for your grace in our lives, and for your continued presence in our future, we bless you and ask you to continue to bless us. Make your face shine upon us and be gracious to us again and again and again. For we pray this in the name of your risen Son. Amen.
Oh.
All right. Thanks, guys. Sleep well. Stay well. Thanks. Thanks for your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy your move next week, Adam. I hope it goes okay.
Oh, thanks. I'm just hopeful that the snow holds off. It's looking good so far.